Let's do, oh my God. Here is another guy. Jim Messina. Can you look up for me? Can we do a little real-time research here? Can you put up Jim Messina, Max Baucus, barbershop ad? Just tickle me with a feather. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Just, you know, just give me a little research here. Let's see if we can find that. It should be 2002. Notorious hairdresser ad. This became a thing in 2012. All right, so Jim Messina, his main claim to fame is he was Obama's re-elect captain for 2012. And there's a couple of interesting things about that. One, because re-electing an incumbent president is the accomplishment of his career.
video's been taken down.
His video, oh, that's interesting. You know what? Let me then read a little description of this ad. And I think it's in the first Intercept piece that comes up in the search. But before he worked, number one, of course, any presidential campaign's a challenge. You have to have some, you know, and you're going up against the Republicans and all their money and everything else. But he didn't get Obama elected in 2008. In other words, there's people he wasn't a main factor in that. I think he was in the campaign, but he was not the campaign manager. So I'm not a big fan of David Plouffe or David Axelrod, but you would have to say these guys, at least, you know, they did something. They made history. They helped elect the first African-American president. This guy got him reelected. And a big reason that Obama ended up getting pretty comfortably reelected was because, in contrast to his, you know, extremely centrist and bank-friendly policies, he beat the shit out of Mitt Romney for being a private equity vulture. Those ads were devastating and effective, and they were also set up originally by Newt Gingrich, which is kind of funny, another sort of interesting side piece to the 2012. So Jim Messina, who after a couple of decades spent working for Max Baucus, who was one of the most corporate industry, just an industry bagman in the Senate. He would go on to become Obama's ambassador to China. I think he's a lobbyist now. Do we have that? Could you just, if you do the Google search, it's up there. It's in the Intercept piece. Yeah, how an Obama crony moved from Idaho to a $2 million Washington estate by Ken Silverstein, 2014. And this is a profile of Jim Messina. Now, let's go to, up until 2002, Messina was largely unknown. But that year, when managing Baucus' Senate re-election campaign, he released one of the more homophobic ads in modern political times. Maybe if you click on that, there's still a version of it, actually. You see that? Let's see. Nope. They really wiped this.
Yeah, it's off.
It featured footage from a 20-year-old TV ad for a hair salon run by Baucus' opponent, Mike Taylor, who at the time was 20 points in the polls behind and had no chance of winning, who was seen massaging a man's face while wearing an open front shirt and hence was obviously supposed to be gay. The ad was set to a porn soundtrack. Caused Taylor to drop out of the race when he announced weeks later that he was resuming a limited campaign and said he was getting, slandered out of Montana politics. And obviously clearly speaks to the massive homophobia of the time that he would consider that to be getting slandered out. But the point is,
there's a screenshot
of this. And I remember watching this ad. I mean, there's a point where when he, I don't know how to describe it, but the point is that even by 2002 standards, this was a profoundly homophobic piece of advertising. And that's basically the only reason that anybody knew who Jim Messina was till 2012. And he was, again, for this corporate bagman, Max Baucus. Then Messina turned his Obama re-elect victory into his primary client became the UK Tory party. He went to work for the right-wing Tories in the United Kingdom. And he is also supposedly the one who told David Cameron that a Brexit referendum would be just fine. So Jim Messina,
the worst call of all time.
Which is arguably the worst call in modern politics. And now he has some sort of consulting firm. God knows what sort of vulture clients he has. And he's on Morning Joe because out of the kindness of his heart, and his real concern for Democratic Party politics, this guy thinks that Bernie Sanders might not be a good candidate to run against Donald Trump. Okay.
It's interesting. First of all, those numbers against who beats Trump is exactly what you're focused on, because that's what you feel voters most care about right now. And those are the numbers that can be depended on. But what about youth voters? Can they be depended on not just to show their opinions, but to show up at the polls?
It is the great question. When you start to look at modeling who's going to be the electorate in this primary, the question is who's going to actually turn out to vote in this election. I think those numbers Mika showed are absolutely stunning, because over 50% of voters under 30 favor a candidate over 70 years old. You add up Bernie, Elizabeth, and Biden, and they're over 50% among young candidates. It says that electability matters. It says that issues matter. This has always been Bernie's big calling card, that he could get the youth out. You know, we just had the highest turnout in a midterm election in 100 years with young voters. The question is, are these folks coming in a very big way? And if they do, it'll change the electoral math.
You know, what's interesting and understandable, I think, about those numbers among millennials is the devotion to Bernie Sanders is clearly understandable, large part, I think, because of his consistency over the years on issues. They value consistency, makes him unlike other, in their minds, politicians.
Yep.
And don't underestimate the fact that Bernie, a lot of what he says, the message is basically, you can live your life for free. We'll have free college tuition. We'll have free this. We'll forgive your student debts. It's a powerful message.
It is, but in the general election, it's a message that I think is going to get him killed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's the worst candidate in a general election for exactly that reason.
You think Bernie's the worst candidate?
Oh, I don't think there's a question about it. I think it's very clear to me that with these swing voters that I care about, the Trump-Obama voters in the Midwestern states, Bernie Sanders is not the candidate we need to beat Donald Trump in November.
Okay, so let me just say this. Maybe Jim Messina's background for some Trump voters might be appealing, and by which I mean the Max Baucus ad in 2002. Now, of course, let's just 2 points here. This flies in the face of all evidence that we have. Bernie Sanders is now leading Donald Trump more than anybody else in the general election. Bernie Sanders is a nationally popular figure outside of these sociopath precincts. Even Barnacle and the other guy seemed a little credulous at that claim. Secondly, to the extent Messina has had some success in the United States, it's by running a campaign that's obviously nothing compared to Bernie's vision, but at least had a little bit of economic populism. And let me just suggest, I'm going to just read from Messina's client list. He's worked for Theresa May and David Cameron in the United Kingdom. He worked for the PRI, Enrique Peña Nieto in Mexico. He worked for Argentina's Mauricio Macri, a right-winger who just lost after devastating the Argentinian economy. And then also helped Spain's right-wing leader, Mariano Rajoy, to a surprise re-election in 2016. This is a guy, most Democrats will at least, they do their sleazy stuff for corporate clients and at least try to do sort of democratic analogous parties overseas, which is not radical anyways. He's also had private sector clients, and this is where I wonder what these people how these people reflect the interests of the Midwest. Uber, Airbnb, Google, Delta Airlines, Hutchinson Whampoa, and 70 others. I don't even know what Hutchinson's Whampoa is. So let me just say that I don't think that we should, I'm looking up to see if I could find more of his clients. That's why I'm distracted. But I don't think for a second should we doubt that it's going to be hard. And by the way, and it will be hard for anybody to beat Trump because he's an incumbent president. And if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, you will have the advantage of unprecedented enthusiasm, organizing, movement, energy, and commitment. And you will also have, I think, the oligarchs as a bloc in this country trying to destroy and snuff out that movement. And it's going to be a serious problem. But it is not because of whatever fantasy life this overcompensated and at times massively embarrassingly unsuccessful right-leaning, made an ad so disgusting in Bush-era America you can't even find it on the internet, Jim Messina has to say. We talk about one of the reasons that how disgusting Hillary Clinton is because how could you keep somebody like Mark Penn around for so long? Mark Penn, who's been advising Trump recently, by the way. Just, it's just some of these people just ooze. I mean, and Mark Penn, he almost just seems like a guy who just enjoys being disgusting. Messina is this guy for Obama. You look at the Pod Save guys and all these people, and they're wrong and they're annoying and all of this stuff. But a lot of them don't ooze the same kind of just pure cravenness of a Mark Penn. Jim Messina does, to say the least. So watch that video, hit Bernie with a donation. And it's going to be really hard because people like Jim Messina, who are, quote, Democrats, I have no doubt that Jim Messina is going to be on the other side of that election if Bernie Sanders is the nominee. In whatever way, shape, or form that actually manifests. Even if it is just I'm doing boring commentary on television to try to damage his chances. You have Joe Lockhart doing balls and strikes, quote unquote, commentary on CNN. The guy co-founded, in addition to being Bill Clinton's press secretary, the guy co-founded Glover Park Group. That is one of the biggest Democratic and now Republican merged firms in D.C. They have clients, including going back to 2012. They did the Pete Peterson Cat Food Commission / Social Security stuff. They did a major AstroTurf campaign for that. They've represented Verizon. They've represented the Saudi royal family. You really think that these people, and I'm sorry, this is where we can just start reducing stuff to basic class and professional interest. They want Bernie Sanders to be president of the United States, let alone in some type of functional leadership role of the Democratic Party? Give me a break. It's a fantasy. They know if somebody like Joe Biden is president, the contracts are there, here's for Sam, the social prestige, all there. Bernie Sanders elected, major detonation. Even his success to this far has been a major problem. And I think Barack Obama has not disavowed Jim Messina after Brexit in embarrassment, but they're probably talking together. This is a new scoop from Charles Gaspariano. Scoop. Democratic Party sources have spoken with at Barack Obama, say the former prez is growing increasingly anxious about Bernie Sanders' rise in the national polls.
Is that just Jim Messina and staff?
Yeah, I was going to say, where an avowed socialist would take the country. He's considering a public statement addressing it more now at Fox News.
Yeah, as Perrine said shortly after this came out, that it's less a sign that Obama is seriously considering a public statement in so much as a sign that various people are begging him to make one.
Exactly.
Apparatus.
Exactly.
Do you think Obama wants to make a public statement against Bernie?
I forget who said this. This is frustrating when I do this, I know, and I apologize. This is not an original thought. Somebody else said this, but for the life of me, cannot remember who said this. That Obama does not want, I think it might have been Matt Christman. Everything's a fragment. Obama doesn't want to do something like that because Obama's popularity and mystique and power is still resting on the fact that he has never advocated for anything so clearly. So this kind of vague, broad sense of popularity is rooted in obviously enormous respect because of what he accomplished and a lot of personal affection that cuts across the board. And if he starts getting into it like that, it's not just that it risks some of his popularity, which might be the case, but it also risks the idea that he doesn't have this hidden power that he's choosing not to use. Because what if he comes out and makes a statement that is so unequivocal, and plenty of people will still say, oh, well, of course we like President Obama, but no. I mean, I think I could think of multiple people that I know personally that are much more, fans of Barack Obama than I am, who really like the guy. They're voting for Bernie Sanders. And if Barack Obama puts out a tweet, they'll say, or a statement, that's too bad. Hey, when's the next Netflix show he's doing? I want to check it out. It won't have any effect. And of course, I do think for the Bernie movement, which represents a huge amount of the Democratic Party, another person coming out and trying to block the guy, that'll just mean another
Donations.
record fundraising day.
Yeah.
Hillary had to like reverse herself a day later too and say, actually, you know, the important thing is defeating Donald Trump. I'm sorry people didn't want my authentic views.
Yeah.
God.
Boy, I thought everyone wanted to know what I think. Yeah.
Right. Please authentically leave. Authentically do a snap poll with Ghislaine Maxwell and Harvey Weinstein.
I am shocked by how well they scrubbed this video from the.
Yeah. That was, I mean, again, that video was a problem, like pre-woke problem. Like that is a homophobic ad. That is not like a, hey, I think that might be homo, or I'm going to do a textual reading. That is like a George W. Bush campaigning to enshrine discrimination in the Constitution. Like, hey man, that's kind of homophobic. So, and again, as my principle with all of these things, Jim Messina didn't say, I mean, maybe he did some type of mealy mouth bullshit, but he didn't say, man, I really learned a lot. You know, I was young, trying to prove myself. Sorry, that was disgusting. He scrubbed the internet and then went on to help make Brexit and austerity happen. I don't think, I'll do the Klobuchar thing in a second. So I think, and I also think if I had to speculate, and this is the most useless part of this business, but I just, like, if I had to speculate, I think that between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton is not, she's going to spoil her ballot or write herself in, and probably prefers Trump on a personal level because she clearly has more hatred at Bernie about.
I mean,
this. And her
how
class
isn't it-
interests are aligned with Trump.
Right, but how wouldn't it be clear that she wouldn't endorse Bernie? Right, like that.
She'll say she endorses Bernie. What I'm saying is that even though Obama is a right-wing Democrat and represents something different ideologically entirely than Bernie, I would be more inclined to still think, and maybe I'm giving him too much credit. I don't think Barack Obama. I think when Barack Obama trashes Bernie Sanders, it is because he's a right-wing Democrat and because he doesn't like Bernie. But I think it's also because he has a certain view of politics, which I don't think is up to date right now. I think Hillary Clinton could see someone could say Hillary Clinton could hire the same person to have her do seances with Eleanor Roosevelt. Look it up. And by the way, I don't mean that it's a diss, obviously. I'm just saying, look it up. And somebody could say, hey, Hillary, I have a crystal ball. I know for a fact it is a certainty that Bernie Sanders is the person running against Donald Trump and he will win. I think she would have still made the same statement because she hates Bernie Sanders. I think if Obama saw the same, the crystal ball, he'd be like, wow, really? Well, now I'm concerned about how he's going to govern. But I don't think he would still go out of his way to F Bernie. And again, maybe that's just giving Obama too much credit. But I think we're talking about different propositions here.